What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another Week 6 preview and prediction. Got two more predictions out for you today, and this one especially is catching my eye from Columbia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks almost beat LSU on this field just earlier this season, and Ole Miss coming off the second biggest upset this college football season after losing to Kentucky. Of course, the first biggest upset would be Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame earlier this season, are going to be looking to bounce back in a tough road environment against and what a lot of people would consider a better South Carolina team. We'll tell you everything you need to know about the Rebels and Gamecocks here in just a little bit, but before we do that, you guys know I got to say thank you for all the love and support this channel has seen as of late. And again, we'll run through my spiel here really quickly. Any way that you can help support the channel means a lot to me. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to simply watch this video. And if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am, and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you doing? Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and thank you all for 2,500 subscribers. Just saw that we reached that earlier today. I think we reached it a couple days ago, but as of recording this video, first video of mine that I'm recording that I have seen that come out. So really appreciate all of that. And hey, if you'd like to support me outside of YouTube, you can go give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It's at TailgateNate29. I post about games I call, articles I write, everything of the like. And yeah, just please go help support me over there. I'd greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive on in. Talking about this one, the Ole Miss Rebels and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Here we go. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, I'm glad you asked. We are first going to take a deep dive into the game and sort of discuss some keys to the game when each team possesses the football. So first up, we'll go with Jackson Dart and the Ole Miss offense against this Gamecock defense, and then we'll go with the South Carolina offense against this Rebel defense, and then I'll sort of give you my final thoughts, how I think the game is going to play out, as well as a final score prediction for who is going to come out with the coveted win in Columbia, South Carolina. This is an upset alert game. Absolutely. South Carolina almost beat the LSU Tigers earlier this season on this very field that they will be playing on this weekend in Columbia. Ole Miss, coming off a loss at home to Kentucky, will look to avoid their second straight upset bid. Let's go ahead and dive on into this one and start with what happens when the Ole Miss Rebels possess the ball offensively. Look, there is no secret. This is a really, really, really good Ole Miss offense. The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, 607 yards of total offense per game. I mean, that is absolutely ludicrous. All of these numbers here look really, really good, except for a couple. The sacks allowed, yeah, the offensive line has got to play better here for Ole Miss, definitely this season. As Jackson Dart has been sacked 9 times so far this year, and then the backup quarterback in Simmons has been sacked once. But yeah, this is an offensive line that overall has struggled this season against some teams that, well, I mean, really, they shouldn't have struggled against, and they are bigger than, they're tougher than, they are more physical than. They honestly should have had better fortunes there in some of those games, and we'll talk about it here later on. But this is an offense that's really good. Jackson Dart is the leading quarterback in the nation in terms of passing yards with 1,815. 13 touchdowns to 2 picks. I mean, he's just having a wonderful, phenomenal season, even without Quinshon Judkins. This rush game is outstanding. Henry Parrish has 8 rushing touchdowns, almost 500 yards. Jackson Dart's shown the ability to get outside of the pocket and run. You have Matt Jones that's back there as well, and then a ton of weapons in that wide receiver room. And, I mean, you want to talk about one of the best wide receivers in the country, Trey Harris, 804 yards, 5 touchdowns. You got Lee and Wells and Prescorn at the tight end position. We know this Ole Miss offense is dangerous. But let's go back and what happened this past week when they played the Kentucky Wildcats. So Ole Miss lost that game for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, the offense just wasn't clicking as well as it normally had, right? Jackson Dart only had 261 yards and 1 touchdown, which, I mean, you take a look overall, almost an 80 QBR, pretty solid stat line. Not the way that Jackson Dart has played throughout the majority here of this season. Henry Parrish only had 62 yards. This is the ground game as a whole that only averaged 3.2 yards per carry. The pass game was able to work, and the defense, 5 sacks in that previous game there, 10 tackles for loss, 7 passes defended. I mean, this Ole Miss defense was flying absolutely everywhere, but the thing that Kentucky did, Ole Miss got to beat up on a ton of teams earlier this year that really should have just absolutely handled, which they did. Furman, Middle Tennessee State, Ole Miss, Georgia Southern, all of those teams, not Ole Miss, Wake Forest. So I'll run through them again. Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern are all teams, again, that Ole Miss should have absolutely handled, and they did. But what Kentucky did was they were able to control the clock. They were able to control the pace. They were able to play disciplined football for the most part without turning it over. I do believe they had a couple here, and no, actually they didn't. No turnovers, but they had the ball for almost 40 minutes that game, limited the time that this Ole Miss offense could stay on the field. 353 yards over 20 minutes, that's pretty good numbers there, but that's just the problem. They only had the ball for 20 minutes. You take a look at the South Carolina defense, and overall, it's played really well so far, but there are a couple of things that the South Carolina defense can get better at. So we'll now start diving on into my keys to the game. Jackson Dart. He's been the best quarterback in this nation in terms of passing yards and being able to push the football downfield, maybe besides Cam Ward or even a Jalen Milroe so far this season. Jackson Dart will have to attack this secondary early and often because it is probably the weak point of the South Carolina defense. But I also think when you take a look at your second key, the Rebels, well, they're going to have to hold up on the line and get the ground game going. First off, for two reasons. One, this is an offensive line that, as I said earlier, has really struggled this year, and we know South Carolina has some absolutely phenomenal pass rushers. They have 14 sacks on the year, and it's how they've generated so many turnovers as well, as they have 9 generated turnovers on the season. And this rush defense overall has been pretty good, but I think if you get this run game going, I think you're going to be able to find some success here on the ground. Will the Ole Miss Rebels. I just think that they're going to be able to find some success, especially if they can get that ground game going. It's that pass rush that obviously is what I think, in my opinion at least, provides some concern to this team. And if the pass rush gets going for South Carolina, and if they're going to live in the backfield, and if they're going to get to Jackson Dart, and this offensive line for the Rebels continues to struggle, that's definitely going to swing in South Carolina's favor. They were able to get some really good pressure in that game against LSU, helped them stay in, and almost helped them pull off that upset as well. But the one thing that you have to do, take away from the Kentucky game plan this past week, right? Slow down this Ole Miss offense. The less amount of time Ole Miss is on the field, the better. You can't give Ole Miss basically, you can never give Ole Miss too little time, because even though they only possessed the ball for 26 minutes, or 26 and a half minutes per game, and yes, that Kentucky game definitely lowered that number dramatically, this is a quick-hitting offense. It doesn't care. They'll take a 14-play drive and take some time off the clock. They'll also take a 2-play drive and go down the field and score immediately just like that. So in order to do that, you just got to limit the amount of chances that they are on the field. That is the most simple, easiest to follow game plan, something that South Carolina is going to have to do here in this game. So get the pass rush going and slow the pace of this Ole Miss offense down, or at the very least, keep them off of the field. Let's go over now and talk about what happens when South Carolina has the football, because overall, it's been a really good season for this Ole Miss defense. I mean, they're not allowing much at all. They only allowed 300 and some yards to Kentucky, but again, the reason they lost that game was because Kentucky controlled the clock here, right? Again, that's just, I'll reiterate it again. That's my biggest key right here, probably of the entire game. If South Carolina doesn't control the clock, they don't control the pace, they let Ole Miss dictate whatever they want to do offensively, that's going to cause a world of problems. It's going to cause a slew of problems. It's just going to leave less the time for South Carolina to be able to remain in this game, because again, more often than not, even though that defense has been pretty solid so far for South Carolina, if it can't get the pass rush going and it can't control the clock, this Ole Miss offense can have themselves a field day, because it really is a tough offense to stop. Now, Lenora Sellers, coming into this game, had an injury that forced him out of the LSU game late. He was forced to miss South Carolina's previous game there against the Akron Zips, and now has had a bye week. As far as I know, as of recording this video, he is listed as questionable, but I think that they released a depth chart, and he was number 1 on that depth chart. If it's not Lenora Sellers, it's probably going to end up being Robbie Ashford again, who will go here for this team. Ashford has 292 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on the season. Sellers' passing numbers aren't that great this year through the amount of time that he's played, under 55% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns to 2 picks, but he really affects the game with his legs. I mean, so did Robbie Ashford there as well, but I think if Lenora Sellers plays, he's going to be massive, more so than if Robbie Ashford were to be the starting quarterback here for South Carolina. And look, that's no heat to Robbie Ashford at all. He's done a phenomenal job over the time he's played quarterback for South Carolina so far, but Lenora Sellers is more athletic. I think he's better at getting outside of the pocket, and no, the stat sheet isn't going to show that, but Lenora Sellers, I think, is just more athletic. He's more prone to get outside of that pocket, but you have to be able to protect him. This is the South Carolina offense that, I mean, guys, just overall, I mean, you look and yeah, they got some solid players. I mean, Rocket Sanders has been pretty solid. The wide receiver room has had a lot of guys step up and contribute. No really one huge, big contributor. But overall, this is the South Carolina offense that I don't think strikes a lot of fear into this Ole Miss team. I mean, South Carolina's going to have to get the pass game going. That has been the weak point for this Ole Miss Rebels defense so far, at least when you take a look at statistics. They just haven't been able to defend the pass that well, and it's because this defensive front for Ole Miss is playing so good. They have 18 sacks on the year. I think that's third in the nation or something like that, but they also lead the nation in tackles for loss. This is an absolute, and yes, you can argue that those stats are inflated because they played lesser competition, so on and so forth. But even last week, when they played the quote-unquote, what you could say, the first true team that kind of has a pulse this year in Kentucky, who just challenged Georgia, 5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. This is the defensive line that's going to get after you. I don't care how good this offensive line is. Well, we've seen with South Carolina this year, this is an offensive line that is really going to struggle, especially against the pass rush as good as this. The Rebels generate lots and lots and lots of pressure, as you just heard me say. It must be limited. And another big reason that controlling the pace and controlling the clock is going to be such a big key for South Carolina in this game is, guys, they haven't really done it so far this season. I mean, yeah, they're averaging 31 and a half minutes per game, in which case they'd be controlling the clock over their opponent, but you got to be able to do it in a more dramatic way, and this is a team that is going to have to win the battle on third downs. They got to convert third downs. Controlling the run and the line of scrimmage on first downs especially is going to be key to doing so, to kind of force those third and shorts. You need to convert as many third downs as you can in this game, and that just has not been South Carolina's strong suit this season. They have not been a team that has controlled games in terms of converting third downs. I mean, this is going to be an offense that can rip off a big play or two, and they're just going to look to avoid to get to third down because Ole Miss is a pretty good third down defense. But, guys, when we take a look on in here and sort of preview this game, Ole Miss is going to be the 8-point favorite here. This is a 3:30 game, I believe it. Yes, it is right there in front of me. I should just use my eyes and look. It is going to be on ESPN for all of your viewing pleasures, and I do highly recommend you tuning into this one. Now, how do I think this game is going to play out? Well, I do think this South Carolina pass rush is going to give Ole Miss fits, and South Carolina is a much better team than the Kentucky Wildcats. But Kentucky is much better, in my opinion at least, at being able to slow the pace down, defending the run, and being able to convert those third downs to control the pace and time. I don't think South Carolina is going to do that. Now, I don't really think it matters who's at quarterback, whether it's Lenora Sellers or it's Robbie Ashford. If it is Lenora Sellers, I do think that with his upside, and again, he's a little bit more athletic than Robbie Ashford, I think it gives South Carolina a better chance to win. But Jackson Dart and company are going to bounce back from this past week. I do believe that Ole Miss is going to win this game. South Carolina is going to keep it close, and they're going to hang some points up here on the Ole Miss Rebels. But I do like the Rebels to walk away here with this win. 34-27 is the way that I see this one playing out. Again, I just think this Ole Miss pass rush, their ability to get in the backfield is going to be a little bit too much for South Carolina. The Gamecocks will not be able to control the clock as well as Kentucky did this past week, and Ole Miss bounces back with a big road win. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. We got one more video coming your way, and then we'll send it off. Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.